Right, welcome to episode 74 of the Ski Podcast, and thanks for joining us, listener. Firstly, as always, I'd like to thank Switzerland Tourism for sponsoring the podcast. And listener, if you're joining us for the first time today, please make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you have a minute, please do give us a review on iTunes, as it helps other people find us. What I'd like to do first, though, is I'd like to start off by welcoming my special guests today. We have Sara Burdon from the Morzine Tourist Office. Hi, Sara. How are you?
Good morning. Very good. Thank you.
Excellent. And we also have regular guest and friend of the show, Mike Richards. Hi, Mike. How are you?
Very well, thanks, Iain. Thanks for having me back.
No worries. So we're covering two countries today, France, or maybe three if Wales counts as a separate one. But of course it does. Of course it does. France, Wales, and England. Let's start by finding out our traditional question. When did you ski or snowboard last? Sara, can I ask you first?
Well, I was lucky enough to be out in France for the winter in Morzine, so I was able to ski tour a fair bit over the winter. There was even skiing happening here still this week.
Great. So when were you last on the hill then?
For myself, it was probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I've passed on to the summer sport of mountain biking now.
That's not bad, though. So you were skiing in kind of mid to late May, going ski touring?
Exactly. Skiing right up to the end of May and the touring, yeah.
Cool. And so were you taking a lift? Because you're based in Morzine, right? So you must have taken a lift higher up and then toured from there?
Towards the end of May, yes, it was going up to Avoriaz. No lifts were actually running until last weekend when they did open for normal skiing, for alpine skiing. But we could drive up to Avoriaz and tour up from there. But right up until late April, we were able to ski from Morzine as well.
Okay. And Mike, I'm pretty sure I already know the answer because we've had you do a few snow reports on the show before. But go on, tell us when did you ski last?
A little longer for me, not much though. Wednesday, the 6th of May, in the Brecon Beacons. Hike 2, A for effort, F for snow.
Right, and remind me how many days you got skiing in the end, despite not being able to go overseas?
That was my 23rd day on snow in the Beacons, and my ski partner Chris managed to get his 40th.
Yeah, that is amazing. And, I was very jealous to hear about that. But, hopefully we'll all get the chance to go skiing again next season. Based on everything I know now, I'm very positive about it. But I just caught up with Katie Crowe from Battleface Travel Insurance to give us an update on the travel situation a little bit earlier on. So let's have a listen to that. Great. So hi there, Katie. Thanks for joining me again. How are you today?
I'm great, thanks, Iain. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. It's been over a year now of travel corridors, air bridges, traffic lights, and could be quite tricky to keep up. So I found our chat last time useful. And I know that Matt Hancock, who's not really seen as a bastion of travel, but he claimed last week that restoring international travel is an incredibly important goal. So thanks, Matt. If you could change things so we can actually go somewhere, that would be even better. Now, yesterday, I saw your name in the papers. I think it was in the Telegraph or something like that. But Battleface had a new survey out saying that even though we've got this traffic light system, a lot of people are still prepared to go away on holiday to amber countries anyway. I wondered if you could give us some stats or data on that.
Yeah, that's right. So we just conducted some research last week looking at destinations and how Brits, are thinking about the summer. And it was really interesting to see that 48% of Brits would consider taking a holiday to Spain right now, even though that Spain is on the amber destination list. The study also revealed that almost 2/3, 64%, said that they would consider Spain in the 18 to 34 age group, and more in the slightly older age group, the 35 to 54s. 52% would consider going to Spain this summer. So some really positive stats there with regards to the sort of the hunger for travel right now.
For sure. So that's, even though there's the result of that would be quarantine, a lot of people are still thinking about, are prepared to go and to do those holidays. And you mentioned Spain. I saw there was some data in there, like it was 40% or 42% for France as well, 46% for Italy. So a lot of people are still prepared to to take those holidays, despite the fact there is quarantine. I'm thinking about going out. Well, I am planning to go out to Switzerland next month if I can, to do some trail running. I've looked into all that quarantine stuff. I'm prepared to do it, but I'm banking on the 5 days test and release side of things, which I think does make a difference.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, we asked that question in our survey, and based on the current amber requirements for a 10-day home quarantine plus testing, 41% of Brits said they'd be willing to undertake this in order to travel. And also, half of the respondents claimed they'd be willing to complete a quarantine for 5 days, as well as the required testing in order to go abroad this summer. So some really interesting data there, again, showing the real appetite for travel this summer.
Yeah, well, the price is a factor for sure, because I did some research into it, and I've actually got my notes written on a little board over there, and I kind of worked out the 3 ways. I've narrowed it down to 3 different suppliers, and it's going to cost between £225 and £280 to do the required tests, which would actually involve me going up to Gatwick and getting it done there. So it's not cheap. If you want to be able to do it, you have to add that cost onto the holiday cost.
Absolutely. It's a significant cost for people looking at traveling this summer. And, you know, I would hope that the government are going to come out with some new plans next week. I hear that in the press yesterday, there was speculation that foreign holidays could be saved for fully vaccinated British travellers under plans that are being drawn up. And perhaps in those plans, they're going to be looking at the cost of testing, and you know, maybe they're going to be reducing the amount of testing necessary, given the fact that they're looking at offering travel to fully vaccinated adults.
Yeah, that would suit me really well, because I am fully vaccinated. You know, I can obviously only speak from my own point of view, but I actually did download the NHS app the other day and went through quite a rigmarole of getting confirmed on it. You have to send a photo of your passport, stick in your NHS number, send a selfie and a video of yourself. But eventually it's all been gone through, and I can see it on there, and it has the details of my vaccinations on there. And I know that in Europe, I think on the 1st of July, they're planning to introduce their own kind of COVID passport to show vaccinations. Hopefully, we're going to find out that NHS app will be our equivalent. And, that will certainly make it, I appreciate the listener, you may not have double vaccinations, at this point. But an increasing number of people do. And if we could get, allow travel through that, then that would be much, much better.
No, definitely. I understand that last week the EU announced that from July the 1st, digital certificates, digital COVID certificates will be widely available across the bloc, and the COVID passport would allow lots of freedom of movement between the 27 member states. So it'd be interesting to see how that all pans out, and whether the UK are going to follow suit. I know that France has definitely has eased lots of its COVID restrictions recently. They've just now ended an 8-month nightly curfew. It's really good news that France will be lifting the curfew this Sunday, 10 days earlier than expected. But is that a trend we're going to see across Europe? It's just with this Delta variant, it's very unnerving.
Yeah, who knows? Predictions have become increasingly difficult, but certainly France is on the right trajectory. If you think about it from the ski lift point of view, lifts are now running at 65% capacity, I think, and then later this month they're on schedule to go up to 100% capacity again. So let's keep our fingers crossed on that. It's the first time, I think, on the show for some time that we've actually had some positive news. But I'd just like to remind the listener that there's a useful tool on the Battleface website, which I think is called Sherpa. And what you do, and tell me if I'm wrong or I've got this right, Katie, but you put in your destination, the country that you're going to, and then it'll deliver all the information in respect of what the current entry requirements are, and what the requirements will be on return, and also, importantly, what a Foreign and Commonwealth Office guidance is.
Absolutely, and also gives details of what sort of paperwork you need to take, what testing needs to be carried out, prior to arrival, upon arrival. Do you need travel insurance to enter the country? Because a lot of countries are now stipulating the need for travel insurance before you can actually enter the destination. So that app gives you all those details. The Sherpa app is brilliant. Gives you all the details.
It's up to date, at any point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's completely up to date.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the point, because, digging around the internet to try and find out what's going on, and particularly with Switzerland, I found it so complicated because there are lots of different websites you get directed to, etc. So, listener, have a look at that. The green list, is due to be updated on the 28th of June. Initially I've been pretty confident that France is going to be added, around this time, and most other European countries. I think that's less likely to happen now, which is hugely disappointing, but probably just around the day this podcast comes out on Monday, the 21st of June, there'll be some kind of update on that in advance of the changes on the 28th. But, let's just keep our fingers crossed that the next time we speak, Katie, in another few weeks' time, we've actually got some of those green shoots are turning into the ability to go on holiday.
Absolutely. Well, I'm still hoping to go to France at the beginning of July from our rebooked ski trip. We're still holding out hope.
Cool. Okay. Well, hopefully, let's speak again in a couple of weeks, Katie, and see what the story is then. Thanks very much.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Bye.
So, that was kind of interesting. Now, off screen just now, Mike asked me if a ski trip was still possible right now. Now, I kind of think it probably is if you want to. You could go to France if you were double vaccinated. Les Deux Alpes is open. Val d'Isère is open. Tignes opens this weekend for the summer ski glaciers. Ski there, come back to the UK. If you were double vaccinated, you'd have to quarantine for up to 5 days, assuming that you tested negative on your 5-day test and release. So it could be done. You tempted, Mike?
I am tempted. It's just whether they pull the rug from underneath our feet as they have done quite recently. I think that's the biggest concern for most people, is the lead-in time is very short for some of these things.
Yeah, I mean, I know that's true. Well, we'll keep our eye on that one. But the good news is there are still people skiing around the world. And I say around the world because I'm really pleased. Got a couple of snow reports for you, listener, this week. Firstly, we've got Richie Owen, who reports from Mt Hutt in New Zealand. And we've also got Tammy from Mint Snowboarding, who was on the snow in Avoriaz last weekend for what I think is their first ever day of summer skiing. So let's have a listen to them.
Kia ora team, Richie from Mt Hutt here. Well, opening day 2021, Mt Hutt, June the 11th. What a day. We were super lucky with the weather being so nice. And obviously the opening of the new Norwest Express 8-speeder high-speed chairlift, which is pretty exciting stuff. We had record numbers up here at Mt Hutt, 2,235 I think the final number was, which is record opening numbers for us. Obviously the weather, on the back of a COVID year, people do pretty frothy to get up here and get amongst. Snow conditions, we were lucky enough a week before opening to get a substantial snowfall from that storm in the Canterbury region. We were, in the vicinity of sort of 3 metres to 2 metres snow base at the top of the mountain, down to about 40 to 50 at the base. So we had really, really good cover. Although that snow had got a little bit firm over the last few days, it's just a bit of water with it and froze. So it wasn't a powder day by all means, but there was still plenty of woohoos and chahoos going down across the mountain, that's for sure. Yep, so opening day was really successful. We're super stoked to be open and looking forward to the rest of the season.
Hi listeners, I'm Tammy from Mint Snowboard School in Morzine in the French Alps. It's the 13th of June 2021 and I'm sitting in my garden just outside Morzine in the middle of a little heat wave and it's 28 degrees in the shade. This morning I went snowboarding in Avoriaz. I mean, I've been summer snowboarding before, but only on a glacier, never in the Porte du Soleil. What makes this even more unusual in these strange times is that we were riding actual working ski lifts. Now in France, the ski lifts have been shut since March 2020 due to the pandemic, so it really was a novelty. This winter, I've just been splitboarding, going up tens of thousands of metres, so it seemed rather extravagant, sitting and relaxing on a chairlift, taking me up to the top of some groomed slopes, but I rather liked it. Here in France, the COVID restrictions are being lifted due to a decrease in the infection rates, and ski lifts can legally open again. To celebrate, Avoriaz opened the lifts for a long weekend for skiing, along with the beginning of the mountain bike season here. This spring in the Alps, it's been really cold, really low temperatures, with plenty of dumps of fresh snow at low altitudes throughout May. So it's been great for ski touring and splitboarding, and there's lots of snow still around. So what was it like snowboarding in June up in Avoriaz? Well, not surprisingly, it was pretty slushy. Due to the warm temperatures, it's obviously not freezing at night. It was also really quiet, especially on Friday. A few more people over the weekend. No lift queues. Obviously, there were COVID restrictions in place, so wearing masks in the lift queues, although there weren't any lift queues. Wearing masks on the chairlifts. But other than that, it seemed pretty normal, to be honest. The vibe on the mountain was pretty special, kind of a mix of beginning of season excitement, people charging about at a fast pace, and then mixed in with kind of just a gratitude of being up in the mountain and riding lifts again. And then there was also the laid back end of season vibe, slushy runs in the sun, catching up with friends who we hadn't seen for ages due to all the lockdowns. All in all, I feel really grateful to Avoriaz for putting on this special weekend and giving us a taste of riding the lifts again. All I can say is roll on next winter to open ski lifts, travel restrictions being a thing of the past, and we look forward to seeing you all out here. If you want to see some photos of us snowboarding up in Avoriaz this weekend, then check out our Instagram at Mint Snowboarding. See you soon. Bye.
So thanks to Tammy and Richie for those reports. And, it's so good to hear about people just enjoying their time on snow and the record numbers in Mt Hutt. And if you'd like to know more about skiing in New Zealand, can I suggest you take a listen to episode 73? We had Paul Anderson, CEO of NZ Ski, on for that episode. And talking of old episodes, we've got over 100 that you can catch up on. So if you're a new listener, have a look at the website, skipodcast.com. Have a look for a tag or category that takes your interest, maybe Dave Riding or St Anton or Ski Sunday or Switzerland, and catch up. But let's go back to today. It was great to have Tammy reporting from Avoriaz. I'm going to keep that Port de Soleil theme going because I'm joined by Sara Burdon from the Morzine Tourist Office. And I've got a bunch of questions for you, Sara. Now, the first one, really, brilliant news that skiing was on offer last weekend. I'm assuming that must mean, is it the first time there's ever been summer skiing?
Yes, it is the first time that anywhere in the Port de Soleil has actually opened for summer skiing. So it's all quite an exciting weekend for us. For the locals, we've often been able to do a little bit of ski touring up into kind of late May, early June, but it's really rare to have this quantity of snow still this far into the summer.
Yeah, so make us feel bad then. How good was the snow last winter?
So, we were very lucky last winter. It was an incredible winter and it just seemed to carry on snowing. Depending who you speak to, obviously, with how good or bad it was, that the month of April and May, we carried on getting a lot of snow. A few people were getting upset about their gardens and their veg patches not progressing as they should. But it was pretty incredible to be able to be skiing in such good snow right up to late May. And even now, while it may not be fresh powder up there in June, it's incredible conditions.
Yeah, well, that just proves the old adage that you can't please all the people all the time, can you?
Exactly. Exactly, that's it.
What kind of numbers of people did you see skiing then this weekend? Because when La Clusaz did a trial a while ago, and I know they reduced the numbers and they had like a lottery system because it was vastly oversubscribed. So how did it work in Avoriaz?
So here it was down to actually passes. So passes were sold. There was only €16 to go up for the morning of skiing. We opened just for the morning, but there were 2,500 passes that were sold over the 3 days of opening. So it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday of last weekend. So good numbers, but kept low enough to ensure that it wasn't crowding, that we were still able to ensure that the distancing was going on the lifts. So France has actually put into place a 65% capacity on all lifts, which will be the same for the summer usage, whether it's skiing, biking, hiking.
Right, yeah, and I think I reported on that in the last episode, because it's 65 now and it's due to go up to about 100% by the end of June. Is that right?
Potentially, yes, it should be going up. We're in the lucky situation now where we're seeing lots of restrictions lifting. We're actually having some restrictions lifting yesterday for masks outdoors, and also this Sunday for our curfew, which weren't due to be lifted till the end of the month. So we're in a very lucky situation in France where numbers are dropping quite drastically. So we're looking forward to quite a good summer here.
If only it was, consistent, like it would be really low in the UK and then really low at France at the same time. So could you explain a little bit more about the relationship between Morzine and Avoriaz? They're two different resorts, but they seem to be very close together. Would you sort of see them as being siblings or something like that?
Yes, so we are two separate resorts, but we're actually under the same town, so the same commune, which means we have the same local government looking after us. And while the two resorts are quite distinct, very different as well from the sort of traditional village and the more purpose-built resort, we are very much actually under the same town. So Avoriaz was actually created by a Morzinois, somebody from Morzine, skier Jean Voinet, who went away to the Olympics in the early 60s in Squaw Valley and came back with the crazy idea of building a ski resort on the cliffs above Morzine.
Is that the Varney glasses? Is that the same person?
Yep, that's the same person. He's, I think, now better known for his sunglasses than for his skiing prowess. But back in the day, he was one of France's best skiers.
Yeah, it's interesting. I shared some photos of the skiing going on in Avoriaz last weekend, and a couple of people said, the architecture there is so horrible. But I actually really like the design of it, because it's been specifically created to be integral to those cliffs that you mentioned.
That's exactly it. It is very much, it's a love it or hate it. I'm like you, I think it's actually amazing, because the idea was that from Morzine, you couldn't actually effectively see that there was a resort up there, that it was basically an extension of the cliffs. So the idea was for everybody living in Morzine, it didn't create an eyesore up on the cliffs overlooking them. And I think it has worked, and it is quite interesting. It's different, it's unique. It's not a plain grey concrete box. And all the wood cladding as well. It's part of the whole environmentally friendly approach to Avoriaz, the same as it being a car-free resort. All the wood that's used there is natural local wood and is left to kind of weather with the years passing.
Yeah, I think that I agree with all of that, and I really like that car-free aspect to it. There's a kind of central area, within all the buildings, which is brilliant for kind of kids in winter, and then in summer there were loads of activities going on there when I saw it, etc. But I've got a key question for you: is it pronounced Avoriaz or Avoriaz?
Officially, it should be Avoriaz, but that does depend who's saying it. But yeah, it is Avoriaz.
But if you were saying it right, okay, it's Avoriaz. Yeah, well, yeah. I'll never say that incorrectly again. We've previously had our judge from Alley Cats on the show when we did the special about electric vehicles in ski resorts. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And also Dom Turner from a company called Skiology. We had him on in episode 65 talking about the sustainability and environmental side of things. And in both of those cases were prompted by the excellent organization called Montagne Verte, which is based in Morzine. And it's such a great example, I think, of a community acting together to improve sustainability. And I noticed in your most recent press pack that Morzine is going to be bidding for the Flocon Vert accreditation. So I'm really interested, Sara, can you tell us why Morzine is so focused on sustainability, why you're kind of maybe a bit ahead of other resorts?
Well, so I think there's two things there. There's very much the community-led approach that you've mentioned there with Mt Hutt. So in France, it's called the vie associative. That's the associations or the not-for-profits. They play a really important part in life in local towns in France. And so Mt Hutt has done an incredible job of I could say motivating local people, but I guess that's also partly that a lot of the locals were very motivated already to go out and work for the environment. And then the other thing is that the mairie, so again, that's the mairie, the town hall that covers both Morzine and Avoriaz, the main part of their agenda for the elections in last spring was the environment, was the sustainability of our two resorts. So the Flocon Vert approach we're doing is actually it's quite a huge project with both Morzine and Avoriaz. So we've got the tourist offices, the lift companies, and the town hall working together along with local businesses to go for that. And when you say about us being about sort of ahead of the curve, I would actually say one of the reasons we chose Flocon Vert is because we're aware that there's a huge amount of work to do. And with Flocon Vert, it's not a tick a few boxes, that's done, here's a nice little logo we can put up. It's actually very much a process of continual improvement.
Yeah, so I've looked at the Flocon Vert before I went out to Les Arcs, because I think they got their accreditation within the last year.
Yes.
And there's relatively few resorts who have it. It is not a simple thing that you can just stick a logo on and be accused of greenwashing. You have to tick a huge number of boxes to get this accreditation, which is awarded by an organisation called Mountain Riders, I think.
Yes, that's it. It's Mountain Riders that run it, a very much respected mountain environmental not-for-profit out here in France. And it's a huge amount of auditing, of checking, of actually properly checking all the documentation, looking at what we're doing. And it's really helped us put together a proper strategy. It's helped us realize some of the great things we're already doing, some of the less great things, and how we can improve them and get everybody together working for that.
Great. Okay. And the Mt Hutt itself, I also really like that as an organisation, because it seems to have brought together so many different stakeholders, because there's lots of kind of, I don't know, splinter groups is probably the wrong idea, but, small groups in different resorts. But this has, I know there's a lot of British people who live in Morzine. In fact, what is the British population in Morzine? It's really high, isn't it?
It's actually not as high as you'd think. I think it's only around 10% of the Morzine population, but there is quite a lot in the surrounding villages as well. Okay, so although it's over 50, it is around 50% of our tourists that come out here.
Right. Okay. Well, it's still a high proportion of the population generally. So you have the British stakeholders running tour operations, etc. You've got the French stakeholders. You've got the resort being involved as well, and also they brought on some quite big players to the extent that when I remember talking to Al, this might have been somewhere else, but. How you're negotiating with SNCF to see if it's possible to put on a direct TGV from I want to say Lille.
It's
direct,
from Lille,
yeah.
So
from Lille direct down to Tonon?
It could be down to Tonon. There's been studies done on a few different options for train stations to come to here. And the idea behind Lille is that basically it makes it a lot easier for everybody to change. You haven't got that crossing Paris with luggage, with everything. It can be a bit of a hassle, particularly for families. But no, that's a big focus, because as we all know, all the studies show it's somewhere in the region of 70% of emissions from a ski holiday that come from the travel to resorts. So while we all know it's not perfect using the lift, using everything in resort, and there's a lot we can do to improve what we're doing here, a massive impact comes from the travel.
I think that's brilliant. Ski Flight Free is obviously a campaign that I've been working on and supporting, and that's probably how I came across that idea. And we're aware that Eurostar have kind of cut out that direct service to the Tarentaise. But by having it in Lille as well, I know you said a lot of your international clientele are from the UK, but you could also serve people coming from Belgium and Netherlands, which are probably your second and third biggest international
exactly
markets.
Yes. So that was again another one of the reasons for Lille, for the Dutch, the Belgians, making it easy for them to get here as well. So it's a fantastic project that Mt Hutt have been working really hard on, and also getting kind of lots of local town halls, local tourist offices behind it as well, because we're very aware as well it needs to have a lot of the local resorts to show the support and to all say, yes, we will push this to get that.
Okay, well, I wish you the best with that. Let's move on to summer. Morzine is known as a maybe the mountain bike destination. You said you're already on your mountain bike. I went out there in the summer of 2019 to do a trail running race, but what just struck me was a number of mountain bikers everywhere. Just dominates the entire resort in summer. And I don't really know the history of it. I mean, why is that? What makes Morzine so good for mountain bikers?
Well, I think there's quite a few things there. Firstly, we were a leader. So the first permanent downhill track in France was built in Morzine in 1997. So I think that helped to kind of put Morzine on the map for mountain bikers straight away. And then because of that as well, we've also got a very central position in the Porte du Soleil. So from Morzine, you can go up on the Plenny side, ride there and ride across to Léger. You can go up on the Super Morzine side, get over to Avoriaz, to Châtel and all the Swiss resorts. So basically the same as with skiing, really. You can come out here for a week and ride somewhere different every single day. It's really easy access to the others. And then possibly it's one of those things that because lots of mountain bikers come here, we've got a really good fun après-bike ski scene. So there's a good fun nightlife that I'm sure you found when you were here, or maybe less so with the trail running and focusing on the big race.
Yeah, I mean, I had my kids with me, but to be honest, it's been a long time since the après side of things has been an issue. But that's interesting. If you have après-ski, then presumably it's like après-velo, is it?
Exactly, yes, or just après-bike usually here. But
right,
so there's a good atmosphere in the village, and I think that helps as well because that always makes for a more fun holiday. The lifts are already open here for bikers now. They will be until mid-September. So we never know, things may ease up with travel and it may get easier over the summer, and so we'll be here and open till mid-September.
Yeah, well, God Almighty, I hope it gets easier for the summer. We really got our fingers crossed for that.
And then the other thing is, of course, as you came here with your kids, with your family, you probably saw all the activities that are on for families to do as well. The multi-pass, it's only €2 a day to get out, to use the lifts, to get to the swimming pool. So it does mean as well that mountain bikers such as yourself that want to come out and bring their family along, they're not left twiddling their thumbs waiting for something to do.
Yeah, for sure. We love the Alps in summer. There's always plenty to do. But let's go back to skiing then. I know it might seem a long way away, and you've only just started your summer season. But when does a resort open for winter? And more importantly, can you guarantee us another excellent snow season?
Oh, you're asking a lot there. So we'll open from mid-December for the skiing. All the lifts in the Porte du Soleil are open by the Christmas week, but some will open a week before. In terms of the snow, if only we could control that, hey? Guaranteeing quite so much snow again is always hard to do, but we can always guarantee that there will be a very warm welcome, that there will be great skiing across the Porte du Soleil, and so there will be a good ski season for everyone. We are expecting it to be pretty popular this winter. We're all confident that everything will open up and we will be able to ski as we want to.
Great. Well, we're really hoping that as well. That is really great to talk to you, Sara, and thanks so much for your time there. That is really, really helpful. I look forward to coming out to Morzine again. We're going to move on from Morzine to another very different M, Macedonia. Now, technically, it's now North Macedonia, as football fans will know, because they're currently playing in the Euros for the first time. Regular listeners will know Mike. With us today. He's kept us updated on the conditions in Wales throughout this winter, but he's also previously featured on the pod talking about his experiences in Georgia, which was episode 37, Montenegro, episode 39, Japan, episode 41. All those links will be in the show notes. But among the many, many places you skied, Mike, is Macedonia. So can you tell us how on earth did Macedonia come onto your radar?
I was based back at home in Wales for the 9-10 and the 10-11 winters, looking after my parents. And even though the winters were great in Wales, I was missing my usual deep powder fix that I get in Hokkaido. I took a short 5-day trip to Switzerland and Italy, hitting a few resorts there in early December. And then I had a chance in January 2011 to take a longer trip. So once I knew that I could get away for longer than 4 or 5 days, I was straight on snow forecast, seeing where the snow was falling in Europe at that time and was going to fall over the next 2 week period. And it was dumping in the east and dry in the west. So I started getting on the internet and looking for my plans of how I could go to places. Russia was number one on my list, but unfortunately it's a pain to visit on a very short notice because of their visa program. The longer you leave arriving there, the cheaper it becomes. But if you want to go with a couple of days notice, it's prohibitively expensive. So my choices were Macedonia at the time, which is now North Macedonia, as you mentioned, Kosovo and Montenegro, these former Yugoslavian countries. And after looking at the snow forecast of what was happening over the coming weeks, I chose the resort of Popova Shapka in North Macedonia.
Cool. And I've literally never heard of Popova Shapka before. I had to Google it, and I came across like a weird story behind how it got its name. Do you want to share that with us?
Yeah, according to myth, an Orthodox priest was visiting the nearby villages, trying on an evangelical mission, trying to convert them, and they didn't take to it, and he was killed as a martyr, and the body left to be torn asunder by the wild animals on the mountainside. And when they went back, and only the priest's hat was left, they named the mountain in the area in his honor. So Popova Shapka means priest's hat in English.
So there you go, an inspiring tale to start off your holiday. What are the kind of altitudes like there? What altitude is a resort and the top of a resort?
You're sort of going between 1,800 in the mid part of the mountain and 2,400 meters. So it's a very healthy 600-meter vertical. At least for me, I'm used to those kinds of vertical distances in Japan. But the actual resort goes down to about 1,400 meters, but it's very much beginner, lower angle terrain, but you can do it top to bottom. So, you're not far off 1,000 meters vertical.
Right, okay. And I guess 1,000 meters vertical is good. I mean, you're there for a whole week, I think. So what was you obviously said the snow forecast was good. Was the snow as good as you were expecting? And, what was the skiing like?
Yeah, their tagline is the Popova Shapka resort tagline is "We have snow," and in my experience, that wasn't a myth. It was very much a case of it, and that's one of the main reasons I went. But it wasn't just a case of they had snow for that week. They regularly get 6 to 10 meters of snowfall each and every winter, and then the base was solid. There was nothing showing through, and it was really well set up in terms of. You could see that, whoever built the resort, and it was built back in 1956 for the army initially, and then it was earmarked for the 1982 Winter Olympics, but that went to Sarajevo. You could see that they chose a good position and a good location for it because it's got a very consistent snowfall.
So you mentioned it was earmarked for the 1992 Winter Olympics. That was Sarajevo. This is when Yugoslavia was a single country. So was Macedonia part of Yugoslavia then?
It was, yeah. They were, Macedonia, Serbia, Kosovo, Montenegro. They were all part of that, that wider Yugoslavian bloc as such. Yeah. And they were all vying for it, to who was going to host the Olympics. And I think they chose Sarajevo because the access from the major city of Sarajevo to all the various activities was closer than going, say, from Skopje, which is the capital of North Macedonia, to their mountain resorts. The infrastructure was a bit better.
And what was the transfer like from Skopje to the resort?
Easy. I mean, you got to do a private taxi. There is public transportation, but it's very convoluted. So it's a lot easier to just take a taxi from the airport, and you can arrange that via your hotel. Or as I did, I just rocked up and saw the first cab on the rank and went up. And at the time I went, it was 55 euros each way, but that was for up to 4 people and all the gear. So considering it's about an hour and a half's drive, it's not that expensive. And I looked back at the prices I paid then, and I've looked forward to the prices as they are now, and not much has changed in that area.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because it was 10 years ago, and you sent me an email in the lead up to this. The prices really haven't changed much at all. I think the daily lift ticket price was €15 10 years ago, and now it's €17. Is that right?
Just a little bit. It was 13. It depends on your exchange rate, obviously, of the euro to the pound, but it was 13 when I went, and it's 15, approximately 15 now. So yeah, in that ballpark, that's for sure.
And what about accommodation? Where were you staying? And very Brit question, what was the food like?
Well, when I went 10 years ago, sites like booking.com weren't as developed, and the properties that they have on there weren't on there. So I contacted the resort directly, and they've got two hotels, the Hotel Sherpa and the Hotel Slavia, which are owned and run by the resort themselves. So I communicated with them directly. There was no online booking. It was just emails back and forth. And then when I arrived at the hotel, I was the only British person in the resort that whole 9 days I was there, so they kind of knew when I walked through the door it was me and it was my booking. A very worn but warm hotel. You could see there hadn't been a lot of money spent on the infrastructure, but the welcome was fantastic. The food was plentiful, lots of variety, lots of vegetarian-based foods. Lots of meat, obviously, but lots of vegetarian-based foods. Excellent quality, lots of fresh produce. So it was, compared with some places I've been to that are a little bit out there, the food was excellent and very, very cheap. I was kind of spending maybe €5 to €10 for lunch. Breakfast was included with my package, and I was only paying €26 a night for bed and breakfast in the hotel. And as I said, I've looked forward and seeing what the prices are now. And if two people go and share a room, you're looking at only around about €35 per person per night for bed and breakfast, even 10 years later. So those prices haven't changed much. And then for dinner, you're looking 15 to €20, or 20 to €25 with as much alcohol you can put down your throat. And then once you start drinking and chatting and spending the night in one place, it's not very much have a drink here and a pub crawl kind of environment. You tend to choose where you're going for that evening, and you set yourself down, and then as you're eating the free rakia, which is their fire water, a brandy
Right.
sort of drink that just keeps coming to the table as long as you keep eating and drinking. So it makes for a good evening. Then somebody will start singing, and somebody will get a guitar out. It's very much that sort of very relaxed, sort of just hanging out in a place rather than doing a pub crawl.
Great. Well, I like the sound of all of that, and evidently, it's not particularly expensive. What about the value, the skiing itself? Then were you just using lift served skiing, and what kind of lifts do they have there? I'm guessing it probably is not big cable cars with that kind of altitude. Probably chair lifts, maybe a bubble. And would you be ski touring? How did it work out?
So on the lower part of the mountain, they've got two surface lifts, T-bars and two-person chairs. And then just accessing the upper mountain, there's one double chair, which is liable to closure because it's very exposed going over a rock face to get you to the top, much like the Martes lift in Las Leñas in Argentina. So when that lift isn't running, you're not going to get the value if you're a good skier and looking to ski extensive terrain. But when it is open, it's phenomenally good value because you're getting 600 meters of straight four-line skiing, wide open bowls, tree-lined runs in the trees, and then rocky chutes, so something for everyone. Tremendous views looking from the top of the mountain back to the plains that lead you back to Skopje, the capital city. So yeah, it's a pretty impressive, just for a two-person lift, it's a pretty impressive payoff for getting up there. And then beyond that sort of goes to about 2,400 meters. And then there's a smaller hill that goes to 25 meters. That's an easy hike. And they pieced it most days to help you get to that little promontory. And then there's a longer walk that takes about an hour or so to get to the highest point in that area, which is 2,747 meters. And from there, you could drop back into the front side, or you could drop the back side of the mountain and then skin back out. So I did a combination of just boot packing because the boot pack was already in, or getting my skis, my skins and my ski touring equipment out. I was there for 8 days worth of skiing. 4 of the days, everything was open. The conditions were fantastic. 1 day was poor visibility. 3 days were excellent. You could see everywhere. The powder was everything from boot top to mid thigh. And then I had 1 day where the lower lift only was open. I had 2 days where the resort was closed. But one of those I got up very early because it was a beautiful morning, even though it was quite windy, and I skinned from the hotel right to the very top. That took me about 2.5 hours, and then I was the only one that skied the mountain that day. I came back down and then came back in time for breakfast and relaxed. And then on my final day, I sort of timed it where I did a 1 day's cat skiing with Eskimo Freeride, which is the longest standing cat skiing operation in Europe.
Okay. But do you know when they started then?
They started back in mid 2000, so they've been going a good 10 years, I think, 10 to 15 years.
Okay. And where did they take you to then on the cat skiing?
They've got a hotel, so they offer a cat skiing package where they offer the hotel, the food, the guiding, and the cat experience. But I was on standby last day of the trip, and I sort of contacted them and said, "Do you have any spaces?" And they had one space free, so I managed to get on just for a day trip. So they're based at the resort. They've got their own hotel, and then the cats leave from that hotel. So if you're on their package, it can't be any more convenient. You know, you literally fall out of bed, go to breakfast, and get in the cat. And then they go to the top of the mountain initially, which is accessed by the lifts, but then they take the cat to that higher point where other people are having to walk to. But they get up there. They get up there earlier, so they always get the first tracks in that part of the mountain. So they're not competing with anyone because they'll get 2 or 3 runs before the lift starts to churn at about 10 o'clock in the morning. And then once they've done 2 or 3 runs there in the more wide open terrain, then they'll ski the backside, which is starts in the alpine bowls and then drops down into really nicely old growth pine forest. So massive spaces between the trees. Not difficult at all, but then when the weather is inclement, they can continue to operate. So some days the 2-person chair won't go to the top of the mountain, but they'll be able to take the cat to the top of the mountain and ski the backside where it'll be protected from the adverse weather conditions.
Great. Excellent. And you mentioned that when you walked into the hotel, they immediately knew who you were because there weren't many, let's say, Western Europeans there. What kind of nationalities were there? Were they all purely, from North Macedonia?
Lots of people coming up from the city, and then a smaller city called Tetovo, which is the closer city at the base of the mountain road. But there were also a lot of people coming in from places like Kosovo. A lot of Americans coming in for their long weekends of R&R, as they call it, the Americans Rest and Recreation.
Right.
Who are working for sort of NGOs in that sort of Kosovo region.
Right.
I skied with 4 Bulgarian guys who'd normally ski in and around Bansko, but they hadn't had much snow that winter, so they did the same as I did, and I'd communicated through the ski forums before, and so I knew they were going, and we sort of looked at each other on the slope. I was on my own, they were 4 together, and we kind of worked out who we were, and then I managed to ski and hang out with them for 3 or 4 days. But yeah, pretty much it's the locals that are skiing there. And then over the last couple of, say, 5 to 10 years, more and more people have been going with companies like Eskimo Freeride and others that have got these snowcat experiences. So the more Westerners are coming in, but still you're only talking 30 to 40 per week, perhaps.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, it sounds amazing. Another one to add to the bucket list there. I'm going to put a lot of links into the show notes. So, listener, if you'd like to find out a little bit more about skiing in North Macedonia, then you can have a look at that at theskipodcast.com. That's brilliant, Mike. Thanks very much for that, and thanks for giving us another insight into one of the many places around the world that you skied.
My pleasure. Hopefully I can get into a few more in the not too distant future.
Yeah, exactly. Right, I'm just going to move on now. Going to put in a little snippet of an interview that I did earlier this week with Jim Adlington, and he's a founder of Planks Clothing, a UK company with a focus on sustainability. They've just done a big crowdfunding campaign, and I talked to him about his early experiences within the industry.
My journey started at Kidsgrove Dry Slope. So 9 years old. Yeah, just going to the dry slope was my first introduction to skiing.
It's so interesting how so many people start off like that. I talked to Pat Sharples not so long ago, and I'll mention him again. But he obviously started off over in Rosendale, and there's so many other people like Woodsy started off at Sheffield, etc. And I think that was quite a nice sort of community feel the way that slope worked down there.
Yeah, like I think the UK has a really strong dry slope scene. And I think it's good the fact that a lot of good skiers are coming out of the dry slope and the dry slope scene, especially now. But back in the day, it was the only place I had access to at the very beginning. Didn't really have the opportunity to go out on snow or no kind of no family circle that was into skiing. So we lived about 5 minutes from a local like dry slope, council run dry slope. And just got involved that way, really. And it was, I think when we started, it was like 40 meters long with a little rope tow, so really small.
Right.
And it was all like old kit, and it was all like, council run, so it was all like really old and kind of, not really that much fun. But I absolutely loved it, and kind of started off going down, like, there was a club there few years after a local guy set a ski club up there, and they kind of expanded and got bigger and bigger. So yeah, just kind of going down there a lot every night really before I kind of got introduced to snow. And it was ran by a guy called Chris Poole, and he used to look after all the local kids that were like hanging around, and started off Kids Grove Ski Club. And that was the start of me, like, getting introduced into the ski scene, really.
So from there, then you decided that you needed to get a bit actual proper snow, and went out to the mountains. You did a few seasons.
Yeah, so we did 1 or 2 ski trips, which, because we got into like the dry slope racing scene. So we used to travel around the country going to races. But we were always like the renegade kids. Like, we didn't have any money, or we didn't have any like proper kit. We used to make our like race pads out of like drain pipes, and used to cut down a plastic drain pipe and then strap it onto us, and used to turn up in an old bus, an old parcel bus, and everyone just thought we were like gypsies, really. And everyone used to laugh at us because we were on like all old kit, and none of us really knew what we were doing. And the team actually used to do quite well, but the guy that ran it was so into like off-piste skiing, and instead of us going like on a race trip, he used to take us over to Chamonix. So my first experience of snow was going on the Grand Montée. Basically, we went over to Chamonix for a week. And instead of doing any race training, he used to take us and ski off piste, because at that time we were all addicted to the Blizzard of Oz. I don't know whether people know the Blizzard of Oz, but
I'm sure they will. Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of the main reasons why a lot of people like headed over to the Alps, especially Chamonix at that time during it was 1988 and then early 90s, really. So yeah, we used to go. We did a couple of ski trips to Chamonix. And then when I was 17, I kind of got a job and decided I was going to give up life in the UK and move over to France. And I got a job just, washing dishes for a ski company. It was Ski Bound back in the day. Went out to Courchevel for my first season and absolutely loved it. It was like the transition from going from a dry slope to then going to snow. I skied on a dry slope for maybe 15 years and then went out onto snow, and it was just like, this is easy, this is so much fun, and got addicted then, really. That was when it really started.
Now, Jim mentioned there he started off his ski seasons in Courchevel working for Skibound in one of their hotels over there. Alex Irwin, another friend of the show and presenter of 150 Days of Winter YouTube channel. I talked to him back in the days when you could still go into ski resorts about Courchevel and how it's changed in terms of apres-ski over the years. You know, in Courchevel 1850 these days, if you're talking about apres-ski, you're probably having caviar and champagne rather than a beer in a British club hotel, and we talk about that in this little clip. And when I was in '96 for après, you know, one of my good earners was on the, you know, the welcome drinks. We used to sell a pub crawl to guests, and from my recollection, we used to start in their keep, which is up there to our right from where we're sitting now, come down to Jump Bar, then go along to some of those club hotels, the Isba and Gringos, and then finish in Calico, which is a nightclub place.
Yes.
So how many of those are still going then?
Unfortunately, none of them.
Yeah.
You say those words to anybody who isn't an old school seasonaire and they will look at you blankly going, what, never heard of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is such a shame that the resort has, in its own right, has gone up market.
Yeah.
And in doing so, all the old buildings, which used to be the club hotels, have all been knocked down.
Right. They've literally been knocked down and rebuilt.
They've been literally, if the English people won't rent them, the English companies won't rent them, then, well, basically they get knocked down, sold, and rebuilt as 4 or 5-star hotels.
Yeah. And those bars, you know, are just, they're not affordable for season worker people.
No, exactly.
I mean, where would you go in Courchevel 1850 for a drink if you're a season worker?
I would say there's one place, the Hotel Olympic.
Okay.
Which is like, it's a bit of a secret place. It's
I know, it's near the port de Courchevel on the way in.
Exactly. And the people who run the bar there were super nice.
Yeah.
But unless you knew where it was, you wouldn't know where it was.
No, you wouldn't get many holiday makers there. It's a 2-star hotel, I think, isn't it?
It is a 2-star
Yeah,
hotel.
there are very few 2-star hotels left in Courchevel.
And even back in 20 years ago, it was the place where seasonaires went where they didn't want to meet their guests.
Yeah.
Because their guests would never know about it.
Yeah.
And nowadays, if there were any seasonaires up in 1850, which there aren't, unfortunately, then, you know, if they wanted somewhere reasonably priced, that's where they would go.
Yeah.
But you look around and you go, if I want a drink, I'm going to have to go down to La Praz, 1650, where they're still...
In 1650, it's not so bad for, you know, you've got the Funky Fox and the Bubble Bar, and I kind of think, what else is down there?
The Boulotte.
Yeah,
which is,
the Boulotte, okay.
And there's now a bar that used to be in Maribel, the Copina, which is like a tapas.
Yes, okay.
Which is a very... it's not really aimed at seasonaires so much, but it's still...
Right.
They still do happy hours where they're...
But I noticed another, I think it was the Ski Olympic Club Hotel has closed down there as well, is that right?
That is correct, yeah. It's there's an exodus of buildings that are just being knocked down, and I made a video last year where Courchevel does a little booklet that has the list of all the hotels in them, with all the useful telephone numbers and things. And I looked at one from the year 2000 and the same one from this year.
Right.
And compared the number of 4 or 5-star hotels like this. And there used to be mainly 4-star hotels. A lot of 3 stars. Yeah. Jumped 20 years.
Yeah.
And all those 4 stars have gone 5 stars. All the 5 stars have gone 6 stars, luxe type of hotels. Palaces, I think they're called.
Yeah, exactly. It's more than a 5-star, a palace.
It's called a palace.
Yeah.
And you look and you just sit, and then when somebody turns around and says, why don't the English come to Courchevel anymore? And you go, well, here's the reason.
Yeah.
You know, it's just become so unaffordable that people go elsewhere.
Yeah.
And it's a shame.
Well, for sure. It don't want to do too much of the back in the day sort of thing.
No, of course
But,
not.
you know, there was such a great atmosphere. And, you know, when I was running natives, you know, we used to do regular parties up here.
Yeah.
You know, it was great fun. But it's more a shame because I think season workers, you know, they always add to the atmosphere. And, you know, guests love to go, like you say, people wanted to escape to go to different bars. But the Calico, for example, I saw there's still a bar there, right?
It's still a nightclub or
Right,
whatever.
okay.
But it used to be run by like English people who used to know the value of saying to English seasonaires, listen, bring your clients here, we'll give you seasonaire prices, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I think when it initially went and was run by a French company, the barman was English, and he tried to convince them if they had a happy hour that doing 2 for 1 for beer for 1 hour kept people in there longer than that happy hour did.
Yeah, makes sense, yeah.
And the only thing that the French could work out was, why are we getting through so much beer for happy hour? And it's like, if you can't see the value of that, then I'm sorry.
So unfortunately, as far as the season worker life, and you know, things change. You know, I'm not going to say that things don't want to change, but you know,
sometimes
you walk
things change for the better or for the worse, and you hope that they balance each other out.
Of course.
And you know, if you look at it from 20 years, you think, oh my goodness, you know.
Yeah, but if you want to stay in a palace and you want to shop in I walk past Valentino, Christian
Prada,
Dior, Louis
Chanel.
Vuitton, Prada, Bulgari, jewellery, you know, if that's your thing, then it is not going to make any difference to you. But if you just want to go out and have a beer, it's not quite what it was.
Unfortunately, with those boutiques that you've mentioned, again, when they think business is closed, which is maybe the end of March, they close.
Right, okay.
And so when you come around Courchevel in April, it's a ghost town.
Actually, another thing I noticed was when I walked past all of those stores, they all had security guards working there.
Very intimidating.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't go in there unless you wanted to buy something.
You could window shop, but you couldn't, you know, like the feeling of going in and browsing per se. But are they, well, why are they there? Do they think people are going to shoplift out of Valentino or something?
I have no idea. Yeah, it's but yes, there is along the pavements. There are, as you say, very intimidating, like people wearing black suits. And then just with like, no, okay, I'm not going in there. You know, so.
Well, I mean, I wasn't going to go in there anyway. I walked past one shop and they had like a ski jacket for €1,600 or something like that. I kind of thought. Yeah, you know, I might wait until I get down to the valley for that sort of thing.
To be fair, I was going to comment on your Chanel suit that you're wearing at the moment. If you could see this.
Fortunate thing about podcasting is that you can't see anything like that. That's brilliant, Alex. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay, thanks to Alex for that. That was great. I'd just like to thank Wayne Hall and the Winterize team for buying me a cuppa since our last episode. I genuinely appreciate it. It takes hours to put together just a single episode of the podcast. So if you do enjoy the show, listener, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/the ski podcast. And don't forget, if you'd like some ski podcast stickers for your helmet or skis or phone or anywhere you want to stick them, chair lifts and bubble lifts are acceptable as far as I'm concerned. Then just email the skipodcast@gmail.com with your address and we'll post you out some for free. So our next episode will probably be out in early July. Let's hope we'll have some better news on travel by then, particularly as I'm hoping to go out to Switzerland in mid-July. But for now, you can follow me at Skipedia and the show at the Ski Podcast, which is also on Instagram now as well. And I'd like to thank my special guests today, Sara, who joined us from Morzine. Thank you, Sara.
Thank you, Iain, for having me.
No problem. And Mike, who joined us from Wales. Thanks very much, Mike.
My pleasure, Iain, and always great to listen to the shows you put together.
Thanks very much. And as always, I'd like to thank Switzerland Tourism for their support. And finally, thank you, listener, for sharing this time with us. And so until next time, goodbye.